Welcome to another edition of the Civ Battle Royale. My name is Dawkinzz, and this is episode 12, Attack of the Lumberjacks. In 1100 AD, the world is plagued with death, wars, ineffective generals, and overconfident settlers. Here is the next installment of their wacky adventure. Starting on turn 171, let's get right into this. Welcome to part 12 of the Civilization V Battle Royale, otherwise known as CBRX. I'm user Autistic Not Weird, one of the mods on r/Civ Battle Royale, and occasional OC writer, largely stories as well as the power rankings charts. Having followed the Battle Royales for over 4 years now, it's awesome to have a chance to narrate a part. I hope the events of Part 12 will be as enjoyable for you as they have been for me. For the intro OC slide, I have chosen user A Redundant Sofa's Uruguay Civ Ball, because I can't stop staring at it. Those eyes have not just pierced my soul but gained control of it, and every part of me has surrendered to its glare. It's drawing me into its sweet white maw, and I know all will be peaceful in its radiant sunshine. Please, someone help. However the hell user Varia gets these out so quickly, it's really appreciated by all of us. I could look at maps like this all day and still spot new things. The main differences between this and the post-Part 10 map are largely border expansions and a couple of settlements. Some main city switches include Korean Daegu going to the Kamugs, Seljuk Ray going to Palmyra, and the Vikings burning St. Andrews to the ground. The second starting map is user Thy Reformer's subjectively pretty chart of objectively relevant TM wars, or Spore map for short. As well as looking aesthetically pleasing, it's a very useful guide to which wars are likely to have an impact during this part. Uruguay beats the tournament record for most weeks at number 1, topping the charts for the 4th week in a row, an almost unanimous decision from the power rankers. Jerks. Partly because of the expansionist nature of the Civ, partly the passivity or incompetence of their neighbors, and partly the fact that they rank so highly in the little things like military, food, tech, and production. Quite generously, Blue Cassette has asked me to talk about Underdogs for a bit. I was pleasantly surprised, to be honest, but I'm assured I'm not the first person to be asked to discuss their project as a thank you for their role in the sub. Underdogs, for those who haven't heard of it, is a dystopia series with autistic, dyslexic, neurodiverse heroes, teenagers who escaped an attack on their special school. They are fighting to free the rest of the imprisoned population, learning how to use their strengths in a world that has only ever seen their weaknesses. As of last week, the sequel got fully funded, so it's officially becoming a series. For those curious to know more, just Google Underdogs Chris Bonnello, or go to chrisbonnello.com/underdogs. For those who want part 12 to just bloody start already, scroll for one more slide, although to be fair, most of those people aren't even reading this sentence. Let's begin. Linear empires. We begin with the Goths and their assault on multiple Muscovy cities. Muscovy's empire has the same vulnerability as the Huns did in Mark II. Their empire is almost entirely linear. Pro tip for any would-be emperors, in order for your empire to have a strong core, it needs to have a core, as in not having every single city on the front line of any war with a neighbor. Side note, just look at the beautiful diagonal line of Goth composite bowmen. Isn't it beautiful? How does a Moorish settler propose to his girlfriend? Almaria. How romantic. I'm not quite sure how the Viking worker has ended up within Moorish borders. Perhaps it's heading towards the recently founded city of Vasteras, which made the Vikings the third civ to settle Greenland. It's only a matter of time before either they, the Manx, or the Métis take the whole island for themselves, and presumably sell it to some future oddball world leader. Alice about to spring again. With Alice Springs being one of the cities to do the flip-flop last part, Papua looks almost mathematically certain to get it back. and once they do, they will have to defend it against an Australia with no melee land units visible on their continent, in this screenshot anyway, and a distant, marginally inferior navy. The sub pops out a spy. Yep, we now have a spy. Don't get too excited though, because they don't get used this part. The main feature here is the Haida attack on Qing's city of Fuzhou. They have quite a sizable fleet, but their efforts may be hampered by the Yupik's fleet in their way, which they're no longer allowed to kill thanks to an inconvenient peace treaty. Meanwhile, a trireme in a lake next to Busan shouts, "I'm helping!" Malacca? I hardly know her. Rather concerningly, the Manx have started to look fairly thin on their own islands. The Moors, meanwhile, have brought up a huge force to defend their city on the tip of northern France, rendering it completely safe except for that one weak spot. If that Manx trireme takes the city, the Moors will have no excuses for not immediately taking it back. Okay, smarty pants. The Shikoku capital, Kochi, wins a previously unknown contest to become the world's greatest city. For those wondering, this contest comes from a mod called Greatest Cities. The rule means that, at the dawn of each new era, the highest-ranked world city, based on a range of complex criteria, becomes a world's greatest city, which allows that city to build a triumphal arch. The arch gives the Civ +5 happiness. Pretty nice. What about us? Clearly, Hawks didn't communicate with his forces much before declaring peace with Maratha. 3 of his ships, most notably a Carrack. For those who didn't know either, a Carrack is a naval unit that comes with the Enlightenment era mod, are trapped in the sea, unable to get home through Marathan waters. I just wish the Carrack had been trapped between Java and Sumatra like those New Zealander triremes. Then I could have cracked a joke about Krakatoa being dormant for hundreds of years to come. Meanwhile, Madagascar sends some of its people to Indonesia, which seems like IRL history in reverse, Madagascar being settled by Southeast Asian explorers in the real world. We are lumberjacks and we're okay. We sleep all night and we work all day. The Canadian forests are loaded with the Iroquois lumberjack squad chopping their way to Ottawa. Okay, fine, they're Tomahawk Raiders, a swordsman replacement that doesn't require iron and ignores zones of control, but they also have the Woodsman promotion, and they're in Canada, so I consider them Lumberjacks. The parallel assault on Quebec City is going badly, with the 2 triremes from the last part gone and the Iroquois lacking in nearby melee units. Also in this scene, you get to see the first in what becomes a large theme for this part: massively overconfident settlers. The Iroquois are so confident in taking Quebec City that they're already looking to settle near it, but that pales in comparison to the Apaches' 3 settlers in Canadian Heartland. All calm in the Caribbean. For all the threats of Barcelona falling to Haiti and all the rest of it, this part of the world is fairly calm. Poverty Point have stationed a catapult in the Bahamas though, just in case. Fun fact, in this universe, the word minnow is derived from Manoah. It was only a matter of time until the tide turned against Manoah, and it's happened catastrophically. Derna fell to a desperately overwhelming Nubian force, and both Nubia and the Ottomans go straight for the capital. Somewhere under Knossos, Minos starts building a complex maze to hide himself in. Sometimes war means surrounding the enemy with reindeer. Is that what everybody means when they say the war on Christmas? The Evenk city of Arema, forward settling both the Nenets and the Kazakhs, falls to the latter. And with 2 more settlers out in the east, it seems that the Evenks are copying the old Kazakh strategy of settling a new city for each they lose. And it is lost, because those reindeer archers are chariot archer replacement who cannot take the city back. The Manx reach mainland Europe. That little gap was all that trireme needed. The Moors shouldn't have any problem taking it back. In fact, they're so sure of themselves that they've sent out an overconfident settler right into the Manx homeland. I don't think of it as much a Moor settler, but more like a Manx worker in training. Day of the Dead. Don't worry, I'm not going to come up with a day pun for every Algeria slide. User the Eipel Jonesian efforts last part were admirable though, even though they were called bays and not days. The Dey is a great general replacement who build Xars, or more powerful versions of citadels, if they're actually used, that is. Despite the flipping of Iran last part and the fact it'll probably flip at least once more, Algeria might end up okay here, but they really shouldn't have to fight so hard to be okay as this. All the great generals in the world are no substitute for competent strategy, and Algeria should know, since they must have the most generals in the world. Worker of the Week. 3 of Venezuela's cities get production bonuses at the same time. If anyone's wondering why, it's because they're chopping down their jungles. Pity they could have used them for science bonuses someday, but not today. Alice may or may not have sprung. I have no idea whether this city flipped or was never taken by Papua in the first place. I suspect it flipped, as it would explain the deaths of so many units since last time we looked. Most likely the Papuans conquered the city and immediately sailed back for Perth, heading home to party in the knowledge that their job was done forever and the city could not possibly fall again. End of days. Looks like it's over for Manoah. The only question is who will go down in history as their eventual killer. Nubia's previous performance against Manoah is impressive enough, although the Ottomans will be looking to balance out their lack of anything noteworthy throughout this whole contest. Meanwhile, the Nenettes become several leaders' enemies right out of nowhere. We cut down trees, we eat our lunch, we go to the lavatory. I think that's the rhythm. The Lumberjack forces around Ottawa are wearing thin, so they solve the issue by embarking. Maybe that's the answer to the age-old question, where do Lumberjacks go to get away from it all? Perhaps they go to the lakes where no trees exist. Quebec City looks like a lost cause, but the Iroquois have at least taken London once again. On the overconfident settler front, the Apaches settle a city in the almost tile-perfect center of the Canadian Empire, and an Iroquois settler attacks Calgary single-handedly. And who would win? A 7-pop Canadian city or one Iroquois settler? If it weren't for how the Iroquois are struggling with their actual army, that would be a tricky question. How the not very mighty have fallen. The Seljuk Empire is now looking utterly pitiful and linear. At war with both of their neighbors and with a very small army, their best defense is the terrain they were spawned in. Ray is lost, out of range of any Seljuk melee units. Up north, the Golden Horde do about as much as they normally do, and on the sidebar, the Holy Roman Empire joins in the mass war against the Nenettes. Incidentally, did anyone else used to get bullied by the occasional kid who didn't actually hate you, but just bullied you to make themselves more popular with the cool kids who were also bullying you? Because that's you, Holy Roman Empire, whoever is leading you this week. You and all the other wimpy civs who just are picking on the weakling to get more popularity points for yourself. You're those school bullies in AI form. Bastards. Sorry if we struck a nerve. BoatCon. Okay, I'm feeling better now. Macau is safe thanks to the peace treaty with Shikoku, however long that lasts, leaving the Shikoku Navy to sail through the beautifully diagonal BoatCon. Meanwhile, a Madagascan composite bowman lies trapped between Canton and Chin, and a Sulu great prophet sets off to spread Bogomilism into mainland Asia. The Manx Sea. The Manx settle another city on Greenland. Although the city's not great, it'll be a decisive obstacle for anyone wanting to sail between Europe and North America until they learn how to enter the ocean. Meanwhile, Scotland seem to be doing what I do whenever I'm attacked from the sea. Not building a navy to fight them, but just carpeting my land with range units. I'm not saying it's a good strategy, it's just what I end up doing. Of course, when facing a Viking unique unit which can spawn land units right next to your cities, a bowman carpet might actually be a good idea. Madagascar 2, Escape to Sri Lanka. If Madagascar put as much effort into Africa as they're doing in Asia, Zimbabwe would be desperately throwing cities at them to surrender. Meanwhile, the Seljuk island city of Kermanshah is looking healthy. It'll make a fine capital for the Civ in a few parts' time. Alberia. The Manx Navy have put up a decent fight, but that catapult and new naval unit, plus the city's ranged attack, is almost certainly enough for the Moors to stay on Iceland. Muscovy, Chin, and India jump on the Nanette hate train, leading thousands of soldiers to ask, wait, what's a train? Libya, meanwhile, get their geography slightly wrong and declare war on the Kazakhs instead. Burning Desert. East Africa, the southern tip of Beta Israel, is now a pillaged wasteland. However, all that pillaging has not led to any meaningful progress for Zimbabwe against Balankab. Not yet, anyway. But just look at that attack carpet. Even deity AI can't lose in this position, right? And now, catch your breath. We now look at Northwest North America, one of the quietest regions on the cylinder. Everywhere here is calm except for the sea, which is packed with potential reinforcements for Haida's cross-continental wars. This shot also offers a revealing look into the Métis fringes. The Métis Empire may look vast and widespread on any map, but this is what many of their cities look like. Your ranged unit bias is showing. Tongu have slipped into inactivity, following an excellent start to the tournament. But it has to be said, they don't look dreadfully unhealthy for it. A nice part of the world is theirs. It'll be difficult for any potential invaders, and they have a nice healthy carpet. They even have a pet Seljuk scout in its own little pen. Scene 26, the 26th shot. A rare shot of Central Asia that reminds us why these shots are so rare. I'm sure in a few parts' time, some war will start here and it'll be explosive, but right now, the most interesting thing here is a Qing Great Prophet attempting to walk on water. What? Alice Sprang? A lone Motu warrior heads up to Alice Springs to see how their new subjects are doing, and is shocked to find that the city was retaken by Australia several turns ago. Perhaps he should run back to Perth and break the news to those who are still celebrating their victory, if he survives the run home. Press F to pay respects. And that's it. Manoah are eliminated in 60th place. They do have a few melee units in various far-flung places, but let's not pretend they could take a city. The Ottomans storm the island of Crete, and Minos heads into his elaborate hiding maze, never to resurface. A few weeks ago, I asked the subreddit whether those who had voted Manoah into the tournament had ended up regretting it. I had no idea at the time that it would be me writing their obituary. The general feedback was that nobody had any regrets. Manoah were likely to be an interesting civ who would either do well and impress us all, or do terribly and leave more space in Europe for other civs to have a better chance. And you know what? I think they've done both. Manoah may have been short-lived, but they were memorable. They made brave attempts to get off their own island, and despite giving away Malaya in a peace deal, showed the occasional moment of badassery. Their capture of Derna may have brought them down, but it was a better way to go than just turtling on a 2-tile island. Be well, Minos. I know my city's under attack, but I really want this temple. Qing builds the Angkor Wat, which will help them expand their borders for less culture and gold. The city of Fuzhou is doing identically well to the last time we saw it, although the Haida naval units don't look to be running out. Battle Carpets. Here we see the Marathan Carpet Navy attacking the Omani Carpet Army. If Maratha really commit to it, they could flip Muscat again, especially since Oman don't appear to have unlocked the secret to composite bows. Oman has too many melee units for Maratha to realistically keep the capital, though. The sea runs red. At the other side of the Arabian Peninsula, the Beta-Palmyrene War is beginning to look interesting. At some point this part, a general near Heliopolis citadeled Padme, reducing Beta-Israeli tiles on the peninsula to 2. In response, they're going after Rasafa and look very likely to take it. That city is not elbing your chances. Prussia, who have been overperforming since this tournament began, managed to get a 6-pop city in the frozen north surrounded by sea and mountains. Meanwhile, Yaroslav, Muscovy's only city away from their linear empire, looks about to fall, if those Goth horsemen can survive the run into the city. "Hey," yells Alaric with a laugh, pointing to the city of Yaroslav. "That's out of line!" Why bother defending a city you got for free anyway? All looks calm in this region of the Far East, so calm that the Kamugs only have a warrior defending the former Korean city of Daegu. It's still in rebellion, which means if the Qing were to declare war now, that warrior would literally be the city's only defense. I doubt it would happen though. The counterattack from the Kama Corps may be easy to repel, but the Qing are unlikely to risk it regardless. London has fallen. Fed up by watching Canada and the Iroquois bickering over the city of London, the Manx have taken the city, and Iliam Doan says, "You know what? I'll look after it myself." And don't look now, but I think Quebec City might be in danger. Alice Springs back again. Alice Springs has been retaken by Papua, and this time they decide to hold the victory party in the actual city. Just in case. Tonga time also looks to have been delayed further as 6 of their triremes are indefinitely trapped in a Sulu-Oz-Papua sandwich, and also 2 vanilla civs and a war we didn't remember existed. And suddenly, war. This shot may only be a matter of pixels away from the last one, but a fair bit's happened since then, most notably in the notifications column. New Zealand pieces out with the Murray and immediately declares war on Australia. I know it's over 800 years before 1984, but I get the feeling that citizens are being told New Zealand's at war with Australia. New Zealand has always been at war with Australia. The Murray are our friends. The Murray have always been our friends. The Sulu are also part of the double declaration of war, and if they can get their proa navy past the trapped Tonga triremes, they may end up being dangerous. Biggest balls on the cylinder. Here it is, the ultimate overconfident settler. Or, more likely, some poor guy who didn't get the memo that war against Australia was imminent. This poor settler's literal best chance of survival is to morph into a city and try to kill units with ranged attacks. Not that it would work. On Wednesdays we go shopping and have buttered scones for tea. So it turns out Venezuela and Manx are at war. Did you remember that? The citizens of London have changed leaders so many times recently that even they probably don't remember who's at war with them. Quebec City is now an unmissable target with a Iroquois trireme and a clan of Lumberjacks close by. But let's see what the AI says. After all, Ottawa, against the odds, is utterly unharmed. Larger than life. Just for fun, not long ago, I did some research on the Selknam just to get a bit of background. It turns out they were a very small community to begin with, numbering only 4,000 in the mid-19th century. They were shrunk devastatingly by European settlers in southern Argentina, falling to just 25 in 1945. The last full-blood Selknam dying in 1974, although around 500 descendants are around today. So there are probably more Selknam people in this picture than there ever were in the historical community, because they were tragically slaughtered by European settlers. I think that my reason for supporting the Selknam is because they are a tragically unknown community, and to be able to support them and represent them is pretty cool. And also they got this cool horror theme going with them too, so I like that. Almost. Fuzhou is now really struggling to the point where its defenses might not hold out the remaining Haida ships, and now a swordsman has made landfall. They have to defend against 3 tiles instead of 2. The Japanese are back, and this time it's ineffective. It may not have been mentioned in the visible notifications, but Canton and Shikoku are at it again. Macau is safe in the immediate term, but they'll be needing reinforcements before too long, especially with the Shikoku Jazamurai coming. Their unique unit pikeman replacement. Outside of combat, these guys can build farms, camps, and plantations, and I imagine they'll soon be pillaging them too. You took 2 of my tiles, so I'll take 1 of your cities. Rasafa falls without much trouble. It could possibly flip once, but it's basically gone. Heliopolis takes light damage but doesn't appear to be in danger. Angry at losing even such a small city, Zenobia makes peace with the Seljuks to concentrate entirely on Beta Israel. So far, so nondescript. The Sulu seem to think that if they split their navy across 3 cities, they'll capture 3 cities and not 0. Seriously, what do they hope to achieve at Geelong? Australia don't seem to be in any trouble here, especially since, as far as I can remember, this is the first trebuchet I've noticed in the tournament, guarding Bunbury. Safe and sound. Almeria is now completely safe in recovering its way back to green. This region has calmed down a lot since we last looked, and the Manx seem to have armed people with long sticks and commanded them to go forth across the snows of Greenland. That's one way of exploring, I guess. Ah, you found my weakness. Citadels. Although that citadel on Jutland, mainland Denmark, isn't new, it's in the full-length video of last part. At the very least, it's worth pointing out. The Holy Roman Empire has a guaranteed peacetime channel between the Baltic and the North Sea, or at least denies it to the Vikings. It's an extremely handy place for a citadel, as if the Vikings haven't suffered enough at the hands of Prussian generals. The HRE only needs one more general, and they could take the whole of Zealand, the Danish island where Copenhagen is, if they place a citadel on the southwest tile. Meanwhile, Manoan units mope around in Sami waters, praying that Minos is safe somewhere down in that labyrinth. Those Gellius can enter other Civ's waters, so they don't have to rely on open borders to avoid being plunged into the ocean and vanished from the game. The Manoan survivors may be around for a while. We cut down trees, we skip and jump, we like to press wildflowers. How the bloody hell did Quebec City not fall? Get it together, Hiawatha. If Hugo Chavez can take over London with nothing but wooden ships... Wow, that sounds weird out of context. You must be able to take at least one city perennially surrounded by your own units. The New Zealand Corps in all its glorious inactivity. How's the war with Australia going? This picture basically sums it up. New Zealand are very talented at declaring wars, but not so much in fighting them. Seriously, imagine spending months comparing yourselves to the might of the Aztecs, only to lose a war against Tonga. At least they knew better than to show up this time. Australia aren't doing much better, to be fair. Perhaps distracted by the Sulu in the north, they've sent one carrack to its inevitable demise, an invasion that even New Zealand can handle. War canoe, I was defeated, you won the war. Great, thanks to my love of twisting song lyrics, I now have ABBA stuck in my head. Well, it took half the part, but Haida just captured Fuzhou. And given the massive force they've brought in to defend it, something tells me they're not going to lose it in a hurry. It's unlikely the Salmon Army will head further north and fight the Wuchan clan for more ground, especially given the lack of range units, so they can rightfully spend some time relaxing from the war effort now. Qing's strategy of having two corps, a North Corps and a South Corps, really doesn't seem to be working out for them. When you really want that one-pop snow city. Yaroslav has been effectively subdued for a long time now, but it's unlikely to fall soon. Not because of the effectiveness of Muscovy's defenses, the roughness of the terrain, or even negotiation skills, but because the nearest Goth melee unit is all the way on the left of the screen, attacking Veliki Ustyog with very little backup. Reinforcements. Venezuela sends a wave of triremes northward to attack further Manx cities, escorting a settler up north with them in a classic sign of overconfidence. In the middle of the screen, you can see the Kwikuro city of Itsagahiti, and I can no longer look at that name without laughing inside. Why? Because the IRL Yucatan Peninsula was apparently named after a Spanish explorer who asked the local Mayans what their land was called, and got a response sounding like Yucatan. So, for centuries to come, our maps and globes label the land with the Mayan phrase for "I don't understand you." In my own personal headcanon, the Kwikuro landed on this Caribbean island, or a Kahiti, as the locals call them, and asked the native islanders what their word for island was. The Marathan Corps. Not much happening here, but it's interesting to look at. Maratha seems to be in a similar position to the Tongu, healthy and not at all vulnerable, but so biased towards range units that expansion may prove difficult. Meanwhile, Madagascar does its thing and occupies every land tile it's physically able to do. But for those who haven't noticed the sidebar, Zimbabwe and Beta Israel have made peace. According to the minimap, the city of Balankab in the burning desert did not change hands despite an enormous Zimbabwean attack force. And my prophetic sentence, even deity AI can't lose in this position, right? That's not quite what I meant. Jamalal Karam II, immortal leader of the Sulu, commands his generals to send our army and navy to attack Geelong and Bunbury. He then facepalms as he watches them misinterpret the meaning of this sentence, sending the army to attack Geelong and the navy to attack Bunbury. Oran goes orange. Oddly enough, losing Oran isn't even Algeria's biggest problem on this slide. Algeria at half health with its nearly only melee unit 5 turns away is likely to fall and not come back. The Composite Bowman Brigade will do their best and the Days will bark commands as loud as they can, but it'll only take one Carrack to slip through and Algeria will lose their capital, most likely forever. Barbarians! Do you see what I see? Yes, it's an opportunity for lore. Barbarians begin to sprout up in the Baltic citadels and let loose into the countryside. Why are these people here? What do they want? They could be the result of experiments in the citadels gone awry. They could be escaped prisoners held for so long they can't remember which civ they came from. They could be separatists who believe that all 60 nations, 59 now, should come together as one and no longer have borders. We, the observers, get to decide who these people are. If someone could start a thread on the sub asking people to offer their own headcanons and lore explanation for these barbarians, that could be pretty fun. This tournament needs more lore. Coyote's explanations for those who want technical facts, though, semi have negative happiness and could be spawning them. Dawkinz's explanation, they became self-aware and went crazy. They know the tournament is happening. They know they're trapped in the cylinder. And they've gone mad. We put on women's clothing and hang around in bars. Anyone reading these titles without any understanding of Monty Python is probably wondering what the hell is going on. Quebec City finally falls. There is the possibility of it flipping, but I'm not optimistic about Canada's chances. Not content with taking London, Hugo Chavez's reinforcements arrive and he uses them on Port Erin. Ottawa, of course, remains untouched. Those lumberjacks must be running out of Canadian trees by now. Oh, the poor Seljuks. Alp Arslan's empire looks truly pitiful now. Merv is being attacked by Parthia, but it's likely to amount to nothing. As great as these tournaments are, to me there's one disadvantage. If we don't know much about a Civ's IRL counterparts, our visions of them can be shaped by their actions in-game. For example, the Timurids in Mark II were shockingly bad, but the real Timurids were an enormously successful empire. The Seljuks were also huge, but I probably won't be able to think of them that way after seeing what their empire has looked like on these maps. Comparing this shot to scene 18, the Golden Horde have moved a worker, 2 settlers, and 1 composite bowman. That is literally it. Nothing else has changed around their southern cities during this part. Life goes on. Not long after the fall of Minos, we see practically no evidence that the Manoans ever existed. Even Knossos is at a healthy 11 population. Once the resistance in Crete dies down, Manoah will be reduced to a few units spread around the world, telling tales of a little empire that once fought big. The Uruguayan Antilles. Uruguay takes the whole Caribbean string of islands for themselves, from IRL Puerto Rico to Barbados. The last in the chain is Trinidad, which is unlikely to fall from the Kwikuro. Tongu to the rescue. Thanks to the Tongu border expansion, one of the trapped Australian ships has been freed via teleportation. The other 2 units are still asleep though, and may remain so for hundreds of years. BoatCon Mark II. Off the coast of Canberra, we have a gathering of all the Oceanian nations except for Sulu, making a nice diverse hexagon. What are they discussing? Well, some are probably firing arrows at each other, but the Murray swordsmen at least can watch on safely, not being at war with anyone close by. Peace at last. Shikoku take Macau yet again, and Canton takes immediate counteraction by signing a peace treaty. The whole area now looks completely empty, which, knowing how active this region has been for so long, makes me wonder what the map would look like if we could see the dead soldiers that spent hundreds of years falling here. Because of the emptiness visible here is deceptive. Muscovy and the Goths also make peace, and the minimap suggests no exchange cities, not even Yaroslav. Intermission. We're now 2/3 of the way through this part. Take this empty slide as a chance to sit back, relax, and catch your breath. because I've already read through the final third and I know how much is coming. War? What is it good for? Like I mentioned, these two are now at peace. Their war has had absolutely zero consequence other than turning a neat diagonal line of composite bowmen in the west, from the opening shot, into a second neat diagonal line of composite bowmen on the east. So, what now? Like I said, the Tongu are looking healthy, but this slide shows their biggest problem. Where exactly are they supposed to expand to? The Chin up north? The Marathons to the west? The Cantonese over the sea with a nice big warmonger penalty? The Crowded Sea. Having run out of room in Asia, Madagascar have resorted to storing units in their own seas. They must be desperate. In reality, of course, it's exciting to see how focused Madagascar is on building up its military. Its natural difficulty in expanding may be made up for by sheer enthusiasm. Oh yeah, the Evenks exist. Moments after Putarana is founded, it's down to the yellow and is attacked. It's almost like this strategy of attack settling doesn't work. Nonetheless, the Evenks have another 3 settlers waiting in the wings. I think Palmyra mean business. Piecing out with the Seljuks has allowed Palmyra to focus entirely on getting Rasafa back. Most of their melee units are Klibanari horsemen, basically regular horsemen but with a few extra promotions. They also need to make sure they don't accidentally lose Heliopolis, with it down to the yellow since last time we looked. We're running out of sea. Before this part, Poverty Point showed balls of steel by citadeling the Apache, and so far haven't faced any consequences for it. Meanwhile, the Gulf of Mexico has been closed off with its remaining tiles vanishing as coastal cities grow. Inside the Gulf, a Métis attack force of 3 triremes didn't succeed against the Aztecs for some reason, and a Poverty Point settler's optimism is unlikely to be met with empty land. Scotland has a navy. Robert the Bruce, affectionately known as Bobby B, builds some ships of his own to see if he can play the Vikings at their own game. Even if nothing else, they'll do a good job of occupying the water tile next to Stirling and allowing the city to regain some health. Unexpectedly, the Shetland Islands are occupied by a useless HRE settler who won't be able to settle inside Scottish territory. In other news, Papua and Australia make peace, with Alice Springs finishing the war in Papuan hands. Gee, this is a long war. Geelong, get it? The Sulu have gotten closer to gaining a city, more so than I predicted, but in all fairness my expectations were low. Flipping Geelong would be a worthy reward for their efforts, as short-lived as it would be. We cut down trees, we wear high heels, suspendies, and a bra. I don't know what's in the maple syrup those lumberjacks have been drinking, but in a couple of turns, the Iroquois have gone from total ineffectiveness to almost taking the Canadian capital. William King and his merry men are soon to be banished even further into the frozen north. Venezuela's attack on Port Erin seems to have fizzled out. Looks like only one of those attacking civs can succeed at once. All quiet in Macau. Whereas the resistance in the city still exists, the rest of Shikoku Cantonland seems calm. Madagascar responds appropriately. I can't tell if they're trying to be the new Israel with their explorers, the new Hawaii with their peacekeeping forces, or the new Brazil with their subtle occupation of foreign lands. And wow, a capital was lost? Which one? Go on, have a guess. Wrong. It's Algeria. Check the minimap. Maybe it's not so one-sided. A shot of inland Australia reveals that the Green Civs have less of a power difference than one would think. The Murray have a smaller empire but a much bigger carpet, and quite suitably, they have taken Uluru and not allowed the colonists to turn into Ayers Rock or whatever. Also, there's a religious split on the continent that may take for interesting politics, with the Murray having founded Jajkurpa and the Australians being largely Bogomilists, or Bogomilists. East and West Korea. Daegu has now been annexed and is officially part of the Kamuk Khanate, currently protected by the finest warriors. The remains of Korea seem to be doing well, although they're basically a naval civ now. Arr, matey. Although the Métis and the Apache are not currently at war, the latter almost seems to be preparing. But since it's quiet for now, we can concentrate on the matey funny city names. Frenchman's Butt, St. Boniface, Wood Mountain. Me taking things literally, I'm picturing a mountain made of wood. Also, funny how one of the Great Lakes, Lake Superior no less, has been designated Duck Lake. Which is weird because it's nowhere near the Monongahela National Forest. Somebody find Justin McElroy and tell him. Japan discovers the ocean. And literally the most exciting thing that's ever happened in the Hawaii Battle Royale. The Shikoku discover the islands. They now have caravels, so the ocean is theirs to explore. It's grim up north. The Sami seem to be coping well with their cities in the frozen north. Muscovy, meanwhile, have a new city up there called Rzyev, which, wait, it's not new? Nope, according to various maps, it's been around for at least one part, somehow never passing above 2 population. Attack settling doesn't work! The Evenks make peace with everyone who don't matter, as they lose another city. Putarana never stood a chance. Fun fact, out of the 4 Kazakh cities in this slide, 3 were taken from the Evenks. The warmonger penalty must be huge compared to what they could have got by just settling the land themselves. Moors swallow up Iceland. Just because an island has 2 cities doesn't mean the Civs are in equal control. The Moors have definite authority in Iceland, with Nuremberg not expanding at all compared to Almaria. And what on the cylinder are they doing with those Viking workers? Are they outsourcing their own improvement work? Insert witty title here. Nothing of substance has changed here. Heliopolis has dropped just a tiny bit, Beta Israel moved a few units, and Palmyra hasn't recaptured Rasafa despite bringing a ton of horsemen. We are the knights who say, "See!" Trebuchets are now commonplace across South America, but they're not close to the night attack on the Kwikuro capital, who aren't backed up by anywhere near enough units. Rather topically, the Amazon seems to be vanishing from Kwikuro lands. Instead of depressing us all by comparisons to reality, I'll go back to my Monty Python references and say the trees have been chopped down with herrings. We wish we'd been a girly, just like our dear papa. Ottawa falls. 3 capitals in 1 part. Bloody hell. The Iroquois Lumberjack squad don't even take any time to chug a bottle of maple syrup in celebration, because Calgary is still owned by the Reds, so they're coming for it. The Iroquois may take a long time to capture cities, but they waste no time running into the battlefield. Oh, and Venezuela is back. Port Erin is suddenly screwed. No melee units, not one, anywhere. With the fall of their capital, the obvious next target for the Moors is the inland city of An Aba. It's defended by old-school archer and nothing else, with the bulk of the Algerian army still around Algiers. Plenty of day, great generals are around, though, yelling at people to fire arrows. Some parts of the world are still calm. A shot of the peaceful end of the Sulu Empire, where the most interesting thing going on is a worker planting a citrus plantation. It must be nice to live here for now. A Tongu settler seeks to expand their empire across even more islands. I guess they can still expand after all. Other parts are getting crowded. India and Nepal haven't had much of a part. The Comics recently declared war on India, but they only have a 1-tile access route, without the aid of open borders, which is currently guarded by a Nepali warrior. Funnily enough, though, Nepal are at war with the Kazakhs and are using exactly the same empty tile as a warpath. Other parts would still be hellish if the units still existed. The war between the Sulu and Australia may not be over literally, but both sides seem exhausted. Australia does have some units left to launch a token strike against Patikal, but that's it. Geelong didn't fall, despite a surprisingly good effort. I don't know how you did it, Ilium, but well played. The war between the Manx and the Moors is over, with the Manx getting to keep a city they didn't start with. 3 delicious tiles of mainland Europe now belong to the Manx, and the city has even been annexed. Sadly, things aren't going well for the Scottish leftover army, most of whom have been killed in the English forests at some point during this part. Monty bites off more than he can chew. Is that why we had all of those Monty Python references? Because of Montezuma? Is he really a part of it? That's canon now. Yes, the Aztecs and the Haida are at war. It's difficult to tell, though. Once the trireme and 2 swordsmen are dead, perhaps Koya will bring the full force of his enormous navy down the California coast. The opportunity for something dramatic is here, certainly. New Zealand sets sail for actual conflict. In this part's penultimate scene, we witness New Zealand wake up and try to do something. Can they succeed? Find out next part. The answer will be no, but tune in anyway. And that's it. This part finishes with the Apaches settling an invisible city, Port Erin nearly defeated, and the Canadian capital being corruption-filled for-pop city they stole from the Yupik. Before I go, I'd like to apologize to fans of Czechia, Venice, Benin, Songhai, Nazca, and Ndongo. These are the civs that went through this whole part without doing anything worthy of a mention, as much as I wanted to include everyone. Well, thanks to this paragraph, it looks like I technically just did. I've been user autistic, not weird, and this has been one hell of a part to narrate. I hope you enjoyed watching the carnage as much as I did. See you on the sub. And my name is Dawkinzz. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you, Autistic Not Weird, for narrating it. If you are interested in the book that we promoted earlier, I'm going to have a link to that in the description. And yeah, if you like this part, please like, subscribe, comment, tell us about it. If you didn't like this part, do the same thing, just to stick it to me. So, until next week, we'll see you next time.